Denoris McClendon. And the police shot him as he was running away from them into the woods, away from the freeway. They used a shotgun, and we've been tracking police shootings at Cop Watch for 22 years. There's only like 2 shootings with shotguns, and the last one was the guy who loaded live rounds into his beanbag gun, right? And accidentally shot the guy, which is a bad narrative because he purposefully shot the guy. He just accidentally loaded the gun with live rounds. So it's very unusual, and for what it's worth, the young man lived, which is that's good, right? He's not dead. And the police are trained to shoot at the center body mass, like that, so because especially when somebody's running from them, it makes it easier for them to hit their target. I don't like that. From day one, everybody keeps saying, why don't you shoot arms and legs? We can't do that. But it's possible, and I'm only speculating, it's remotely possible that the officer thought to himself, I have a better chance of hitting a guy running away in an extremity if I use a shotgun because the pellets will spread out. And maybe, just maybe, he thoughtfully decided not to kill this person. That doesn't mean it was right for him to shoot him at all, but if officers are starting to think this way and say, I'm going to find a way to not kill this person, maybe that, even though it's against their training. And if he gets disciplined for doing that, if that's the case and he gets disciplined for doing that, I think there'll be a different kind of an upset for us to protest against. So the thing about Denoris McClendon is that 10 years ago, he went before our Citizen Review Committee because his brother had gotten into a fight with another civilian who was armed with a pipe. And his mom said, you go lock up the house, we're going to go to the hospital. So he ran into the house and grabbed the little thing to keep the sliding glass door closed. And a police officer came into the house and pointed a taser at him and said, drop that, drop that, drop that. And he did, and the officer tasered him anyway. So he filed a complaint. They investigated it. They said the officer was within policy. The review board looked at it and said, well, we can't really prove he was out of policy, but you can't say that it was in policy either. So we're going to change that to an insufficient evidence finding and ask for the officer to get debriefed. And the Bureau changed that finding because of our review board. So for what it's worth. But here's a young man who at that point already his mother described him as having emotional problems. Whatever, he was 12 years old. I think it was 15 back then. 15 years old. And then he has this horrible experience with the police, and then the system doesn't hold the police officer accountable. So imagine what he must have been thinking to the extent he was when he was running around with that fake firearm, and the police approached him that day. So just to compare that to another important police shooting, everybody might remember that Aaron Campbell. The reason the police came out to Aaron Campbell's house in the first place is he was despondent because his brother had just died, and he was threatening suicide. Denoris's mom died last month, and he's been kind of depressed, and he was off in the bushes the night before, thwacking at the bushes, thinking the FBI was spying on him. So his grandma put him in the mental health hospital the night before. They released him in the middle of the night. So the authorities knew he had mental health issues, but according to the cops, they didn't know who he was when they got all the calls from the people he was waving his gun at on the freeway. And one other good story, I guess, it's nice to hear nice things about the cops every once in a while, is that what we heard, and again, we don't know, we can't verify this, is that when the cops were trying to get him to surrender after he'd been shot, instead of saying, drop the effing gun, F you, blah, 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 and yelling at him, they were saying, you're doing really great, we're working this out, so they were like de-escalating.
Yeah, you see de-escalating, yes. You don't see that so much.
I've
seen the interactions with the police, and they,
right. So they brought in
some of them.
They brought in the Enhanced Crisis Intervention Team, which is part of this agreement, and those folks apparently, allegedly, de-escalated, and they took him into custody. He went to the hospital. Now they're charging him with menacing. I don't know what else.
This is still Denoris that you're talking about?
Yeah, it's Denoris. So that's the news I have about Portland Police.
The settlement, where exactly is the money that is going to be used, the $5 million?
$5 million? Where is it?
Coming from?
From the city coffers. I mean, there was a new tax that was put on everybody who has a landline, which is not everybody anymore. That was I can't remember what the tax was for. It was to but it was this Mayor Adams, who put it in place, was insistent it wasn't to pay for DOJ reforms, but essentially it's going to raise the same kind of money that needs to be.
Because there was somebody I was talking to the other day at the progressive part of me, and they said they thought the money's going for the feds.
Oh, not at all. No. The federal government's not spending the money on this, except to the extent that they have people observing. Hello. They have people observing what's going on, and now that this is in place, the city has been acting. I guess I should probably let everybody know. Would you like to tell everybody who you are?
I'm a reporter.
Just so you know, the reporter here now is with the Guardian in the UK. The very finest paper that actually cares about human rights in many ways. Unlike many of the newspapers in our country. So, what was it? Oh, so the DOJ has been sitting in the background while the city's been making all these changes. They've been making changes to their policies, to the training, to the use of force policy specifically. They've been making changes to the oversight board. They've been making changes to this and that. And we asked the DOJ, so what do you think about that? Are they doing what is written in the agreement? They said, we don't want to comment on that until it's entered into the record. So now it's entered in the record. So I'm hoping that we're going to hear from them a little bit about whether the city's been doing the right things. Because in most cases, we don't think they've gone far enough. I don't have any specific news about Keaton's case. Does anybody else? Mike, didn't you say you ran across a video online?
I don't know if it's a new video or old, but something on Channel 6 was showing the video that was taken from the house and of Keaton being shot. And the text they put on the screen was different when I was watching it compared to what I seen and what I worked with Fred as he put together the video. And we put text on the screen on what we thought we heard. And one real poignant thing in the video that I worked and helped Fred with was, let's do it. We heard the police say, let's do it, and then the barrage of shots. And the Channel 6 video, they don't put the text, let's do it, up on the screen. There's some other text there prior, but they stopped doing that, and the audio almost starts draining away. So as important as that is, and as poignant as that is, it was just the irony that it wasn't put there. They just ignored it or left it out. They also, when I was working with Fred and helping with the text on the video, we heard it as, I got my hands up, I got my hands up. Their text at that time says, watch it, watch it, watch it, like it's the police saying that, versus what we felt was saying, I got my hands up, I got my hands up, and then followed by, let's do it. So it seems kind of hokey and misleading.
Yeah, I don't know if irony is the right word. I think dishonest is probably more close.
Yeah.
The U.S. media is full of crap. I've been trying to find stuff on Fukushima, and nobody's reporting really on what's happening over there. So it's like this, the industry has them by the whatever, and they're not talking because do you believe what the government tells you? You believe what any government tells you? So it's a mess.
In watching this, Channel 6 this was on their YouTube channel, KOIN's Channel 6 YouTube channel. They had 2 or 3 other little short videos, all of the press filming the police, and it was almost like it was like a propaganda spokespiece for the police. They were doing PR work, from cleaning up people sleeping in empty houses in Gresham, and they would throw in things like there's criminals and there's human trafficking going on and gangs, and we're boarding up these windows. So they're just sort of like doing PR work, it seemed like.
So this is Lenny Reichenfall reporting from Gresham.
It was pretty deceptive.
Yeah.
Speaking of Nazis, if anybody hasn't seen this is our new issue of the Cop Watch newsletter, this report.
Number 63.
Yep, we just put it out 2 weeks ago. Stuff in here about DOJ. Of course, this is before the agreement was finalized.
Thanks.
about the cop who liked Nazis.
Oh yeah.
All right, so so our citizen review committee, again, for what it's worth, and again, we're not saying it's perfect by any means, but they had a case where these homeless folks were underneath the bridge. Did I tell you the story last month?
Angel.
You know,
I just saw Angel in Chapman Square. I spoke to him.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, if you have a way to get hold of him, he missed his hearing.
Oh, what a dork.
But they decided to hold the officer out of, that said the officer was out of policy. He pepper sprayed them. So first, they were trying to sweep out the people from underneath the bridge, and a dog ran by this cop, and it was running loose without a leash. He grabbed it by the neck and jammed it to the ground, and everybody started getting very upset and saying, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing?" And in that melee, the same cop took out his pepper spray, sprayed one guy, Angel, in the face, and his girlfriend grabbed him to pull him away so that he wouldn't get hurt and there would be no more confrontation. And the cop turned and pepper sprayed her in the face. So the review board looked at all the facts, listened to the police, read all the reports, and said, so the city found he was out of policy for putting himself in a position where he had to use force. So grabbing the dog precipitated the argument that precipitated him using force. But they didn't find him out of policy for using the force. So the review board said, yeah, we should sustain the finding of excessive force for using the pepper spray. Most of them said only the pepper spray against the young woman was out of policy. I think that all the use of pepper spray was out of policy. And if he was out of policy by creating the situation, it's like if you broke into a store and then took a candy bar and put money on the counter, right? So you legally bought the candy, but would you still not only be charged with breaking and entering and not theft because you paid for it? So the officer put himself in the position of using the force, and they used the force, but they didn't find that out of policy. So the chief he gets to decide if he wants to accept that recommendation or not. We'll see what happens. And if he says no, it could go all the way to city council or here.
And that particular policeman has a history.
Yes, he does. Tell us about it.
What name?
Todd Engstrom.
Uh-huh.
What do you know?
Well, he punched a 15-year-old repeatedly during a march. Remember, it was that
May Day?
That was another it was a Palestinian solidarity march. I think. Yeah.
Oh, was it a May Day
like
march?
3 years ago. No, it was just a nighttime sort of FTP solidarity, right after the camps.
Solidarity with Egypt.
It was Egypt.
In the square.
It was right. It was Egypt.
Tahrir Square.
That's right. And it started in Pioneer Courthouse Square and started moving towards the river, and that's when the cops came down on him. And,
Well, Officer Engstrom.
Yeah, it was Engstrom.
Wasn't he the same one, Dan, that was in a video of a May Day where all the bikes were laying in Broadway and they were dragging people or taking people around over by the Benson Hotel to book them? And there's a big bike throwdown and a guy with shorts went up and punched.
Maybe?
I think it was the same guy.
No. I know what you're talking about. I've seen the video of that.
Yeah,
and that is that's not Engstrom.
Okay.
Yeah, because Jesse Haddon filmed that. That's on his channel. And there's a close-up of that guy.
Yeah,
that guy's
not the same guy.
That guy's definitely not Engstrom.
What we did learn about Engstrom is that he is a person that teaches other cops how to use pepper spray, and each person who takes his class has to pay $150.
Wow.
And so if he gets found out of policy for his misuse of pepper spray, how's that going to reflect on his career, right? So he's probably going to fight this pretty strongly. It'll be very interesting to see how this plays out.
Seems to be pro pepper spray.
Exactly.
And pro-punching people.
Yeah, no, we've heard other people in the community complain about his attitude.
He's had complaints. On top of all.
And the officer who shot Denoris McClendon, by the way, who shot somebody in 2005, who also lived, so you know, his second officer involved shooting. I can't remember his name off the top.
So on this new settlement, are they going to keep up their records?
What do you mean by that?
Like because the U.S. DOJ said they didn't have enough to go for the, direct shooting and profiling of people because they couldn't find enough information. Right. Are they going to clean up their act? Because I know they're working like in an 1800s mode. That description of the flow chart that goes around and around to nowhere.
When you say they, you mean the DOJ? Are they going to track?
No, the city
poli-
and the Portland
The
PB.
police, you mean just making incident reports actually have information?
Yeah.
That's part of the agreement, is that every use of force incident now has to have a sergeant come out on the scene to do an investigation, and a special kind of report called an after-action report has to be written. Unfortunately, though, I mean, while that sounds good, right, what we're still having is somebody sitting there on the street after getting punched or kicked or pepper sprayed or whatever by a police officer, and another police officer comes out to do the interviews. And, you know, we've heard in the past, officers go up to somebody and say, what did you see happen? Well, he punched the guy right in the face. Well, I know this guy. I don't think he would do that. Especially if it's the sergeant who supervises the guy. So, you know, we want it to be a civilian investigator, not a police officer. But that's not the way things are going. But they have to. They're tracking those after-action reports and making sure that they all get written, saying how many are complete, saying how long it takes. They've already been posting reports about how much use of force has been used every quarter. They originally were saying how many people who had force used against them were, quote, transients, and the number was so high that they stopped publishing it because they didn't think it was right. It's probably just because there's some people that didn't give her an address. But I think they should publish it with an asterisk saying, we're not sure why this number is so high, because I think the community needs to know. And African Americans get 30% of the force in Portland used against them, even though they're 6% of the population.
A bit disproportionate, like 5 times disproportionate.
Yeah,
5 times 6 is 30.
Well, it's been hovering between 25 and 30. So.
Okay, so 4.5 times the proportional amount of force necessary.
But they have been publishing those statistics, which is, you know, we weren't getting that before. So for what it's worth, again.
How about the camera?
Well, I don't know how everybody here feels about cop cameras. We had quite a discussion about it at Portland Cop Watch. And I think there's a lot of people who, you know, I kind of want to preface this by saying when Jose Mejia was shot in a psychiatric hospital in 2001 by the Portland police, everybody said, we got to find something that the police can do other than shoot people. And tasers had just been invented. So the Portland police put together a task force, and they're like, oh, let's get tasers, because somebody did a little demonstration and showed how, oh, look, it doesn't kill you. And taser insisted it's not harmful, it just incapacitates you for 5 seconds, and then you're okay, and blah, blah, no long-term effect. And then people start dying. I mean, they'd already started dying before the Portland police got them, but throughout from 2001 to like 2008, about 350 people died. And finally, after a couple of lawsuits, Taser said, well, it could cause death in some circumstances. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's my background to the police camera story. So everybody's saying police cameras are going to stop brutality, they're going to lower the use of force, lower complaints. Always points to the same study. Rialto, California?
Yes.
Rialto, California, city of 100,000 people with, I don't remember how, 300 police officers. And 60% of the use of force went down and 80% of the complaints went down. But the study that was done was paid for by Taser International, the same company that makes tasers and manufactures lapel cameras. So they have an interest in saying that these cameras are a magic
Well,
or a
you
magic
know,
tool.
statistics can be damning. Like, if there was only 20 complaints about use of force in the city, and the next year there was only 7,
Yes.
that would be a 70% decrease,
Correct.
wouldn't it?
Correct.
So, give us the raw
hard
data.
number.
Give me the raw
Exactly,
data.
Exactly. But when you see people talk about, these studies have been done, they all point to the same study. There's always
Right.
just one study.
Yeah, I keep hearing that
Well,
too.
it depends on who is going to be running the program.
Well,
Because, I mean, I'm the person that brought it up to the judge. So
you are.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna have to take you aside, Roberto. No, I mean.
So, I mean, I realize there's pros and cons, but what I'm thinking is if somebody gets saved and not killed by that camera being there,
Yeah,
then
well-
it has one aspect. I'm not,
Well, I can say that about tasers too. So my point is, though, at Cop Watch, we didn't mount a huge campaign against tasers. We knew they were coming anyway. We couldn't stop them. So I feel like the cameras are coming anyway. But we have to keep all these things in mind.
Right,
We have to keep in mind that there's a corporation that's going to make money off of it.
Right.
That the police are taping us and gathering information about us. And Chief Reese was on OPB yesterday. I don't know if anybody listens to OPB, but he and Daryl Turner from the union were talking about this, and Chief Reese repeated 3 times we're going to be able to have more prosecutions because of it. So their interest is in having people say, "Oh yeah, I just took that thing from that, without paying for it." Their interest is in prosecuting the community and gathering information about us and possibly using it for intelligence. We don't know what they're going to use it for. And if as a side issue, they happen to catch a few officers doing misconduct, well, that's the price of their doing business from their point of view. And for us, that's a big plus, but I think the negatives could outweigh the plus. Right? So I think we just have to be really cautious.
Well,
and we have to
I
keep
mean, that
reminding
was
about
considered by the ACLU, and they said, yeah, we understand the positives and the negatives, and it's got to be looked at while it's being put in place, and then I'm sure they're going to go to court. So, but anyway, that's out there. So.
I think more conversations about it, certainly, and like the one we're having right now, and having CopWatt's position on this of like we're not encouraging the cameras, and they've been holding back a little bit on that. My first thought on it, as I've watched lots of video footage from lapel cams, from police in various cities, thought, that's great, they caught the guy, we need more of that. But as I hear some of the arguments and I start seeing some of the concerns, and one of the concerns is the cops are filming us. They're not filming themselves. There's not like a videographer in the back seat that jumps out. It's them filming whatever they want. And we at CopWatch encourage people to film the police. We teach about that. But this is a case of the police filming us.
Well,
And just one more thing, Roberto, is that when we go to protest, there's all these cops all over the place filming us. They say it's for training, it's for all these other reasons, but they're filming us and they're looking over that footage, and that's concerning. That's really concerning to us. And so this is just another phase of that in a way. But I hear you also as if it could save one life.
I just think, the situation, if it's on camera, the cops in LA turned off the cameras, they turned off the sound, but people realize what's going on, so maybe that'll go through the courts or whatever. But, it's a new territory, so...
It is.
It has to stay on top of it, but the internals of it is who's keeping... Where is the film or the stuff
they
that
do
the
have
documents,
systems
so-
that are password controlled. They can't turn them off. The video is wireless, and it
So let's
stays.
say that they capture everything. There was a shooting in New Mexico, a horrible shooting of a homeless man.
Yeah, I know that was on camera. I know.
As far as we know, the shooting wasn't prevented by the camera, right?
Right.
Oakland police got the cameras. They didn't become any less brutal after they got the cameras.
Nope, there's
no
tons of
production
instances of people being killed on camera and the police be getting off scot-free. Like the camera
Would
did
they
no
have
good.
done that here?
And you can
Like-
track back to Rodney King being beaten down by the LAPD. That was caught on camera, and the jury looked at it and they said, "Oh, that's not against the law."
But wasn't that a video from not
pro-
directly on the police? It was
Yeah, a guy across.
It was a guy in
That's
an
what I'm
apartment
saying.
filming
And even
across
when
the
you have
street or
a
whatever.
third-party
Yeah.
video, like Joe anybody's talking about.
Like
That
Keaton.
Even when you have a third-party video, it doesn't. Right, and Keaton
Like
Otis Vigil.
Keaton, like
Yeah.
Keaton.
Exactly.
What
They don't
good did
care.
it do?
They don't care. They have video. We have video that proves that they murdered somebody. They don't care.
No.
So it's going to. They want. The only reason that the powers that be would want this is that they can use it against us.
Well, we have a corrupt court system too, so the justice system. So whatever.
This is a metric that you'll never be able to figure out. Figure out if it worked or not.
I mean, it's
because
out there.
there's gonna be film out there, and if a cop thinks twice rather than gunning somebody down, you're never going to see that footage. How are you going to know how many people you save?
I've seen a lot of footage from during the Occupy times when on N17 when there's a big bunch of bank protests and the police pushed everybody off the sidewalk into the street. They pepper sprayed the girl. There was tons of video cameras by police on sticks right in the middle of where all the pushing and shoving, and you see if they release any of it, it's for PR work for themselves to the public, and it doesn't show any of them jabbing people, hitting. It doesn't show any police abuse, and I don't know as a citizen how I could even get my hands on that footage. And there was numerous cameras right in on that action, and none of it's being used for police accountability that I know of.
We'll see.
So it's concerning. It's
Like I
concerning.
said, well, when I say they're inevitable, ironically, the police union is very concerned about it. And, you know, in some ways, I can understand rightfully so, because let's pretend that they're griping, grousing about their superiors, and the superior gets the footage, and then they use that to discipline them. You know, or like whistleblowers
I
or
would,
something.
well, with the amount of energy coming from the other side, I figured they would never get put in place. I just mentioned it.
Oh, well,
You know,
it's gonna-
It's a hot
Because-
topic these days.
the mayor and the judge said he wanted them. So
The
they're-
chat says everything should go direct to live stream.
but I was thought that the PPA would just say, no way, there's nothing you're going to do about this, because that Turner guy, he's in another reality.
Well, that's true.
You know, I heard.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. So go ahead.
Go,
I got to
man,
catch
go.
my
Well,
breath.
it's just that the union has the ability to put the brakes on this and put on some certain restrictions, and they're not going to have concerns for the same reasons we do. But you know, it'll give some time for the community to come forward with some of our, like this thing that Mike's talking about, Joe, is the 181-575, the law that was put in place by the ACLU in the early 80s because of the Red Squad here, says you can't collect or maintain information about people's social, political, or religious affiliation unless there's suspicion, reasonable suspicion of criminal conduct. That means when you're at a protest and you're next to people, when they videotape you, just by collecting the information, it's again for law enforcement to do that. So I would say it's the same thing when they have a lapel camera. That unless the camera's only turned on when they're approaching somebody that they suspect of a crime, they are spying on us. And so then the other thing that I keep joking about is that unless we have a chance to do a year rights in the police training for all 1 million people in the Portland metropolitan area first, where they know they have the right to remain silent and say, am I free to go, before the cop starts talking to them, they're going to start saying stupid stuff. And as you know, can and will be used against you in court of law. And we'll end up with a lot more people in the criminal justice
Yeah,
system. Instead of a lot.
that's the double-edged sword thing
Very
about
much.
this. Is that it may prevent deaths, but it also is going to enhance convictions.
Yep.
I remember what I was going to say, and it was a lawyer at one time saying that when we were complaining about the violating 181.575, he said, I'm not too concerned about that because if I need to subpoena any footage, I'll be using their footage. So the flip side to the argument is that maybe through lawyers in cases where the documentation is there, it will be available to really get to the truth of what happened. Maybe through the courts and having a lawyer subpoena that, it could maybe become a tool or a benefit to say they abused.
Well, I mean, we're going to find out.
Yeah.
I mean, if the cameras go in place.
And if they're used
Because it
correctly.
sounds like they're going to do it, but, you know, the Turner and the PPA, I don't think they want
They don't want no.
They don't want
Well,
anybody.
they didn't say they opposed it. They just said that we have to think about it, we have to study it, we have to have the right, regulations in place. That's kind of, I think that's essentially what the ACLU says too. If you go to their national site, that's what they are saying. That you have to have all these fail-safes about storage and how
Right.
long and who gets access to it.
So that's why we're going to be fought on a national level, because it's the implementation of the cameras is happening everywhere. I mean, it's New York,
And it's happening
LA,
fast. It's happening the
Oakland.
same way that tasers got implemented.
Yeah.
It's happening all over the country, and somebody's making a lot of money.
But with the tasers, we got this guy, the naked guy in Portland that was rolling around on the floor, and they were zapping him. And it was a diabetic attack situation. That was in the,
Not part of the study.
yeah. So,
Right. Exactly. That's
they have to look at the taser and say how it's being used, and that's what the judge was saying, right?
So, and that's they have to look
And
at
you
the,
guys were
and
saying.
they're going to have to look at the cameras and see how they're being used too.
Right.
And that's my point. Is that it's like any technology gets to place. You have to be really cautious. And I certainly I think that the reason that we're taking a neutral position is that sure maybe one day it will find some misconduct and a police officer will be found out of policy, but it'll also probably convict somebody from our movement or from our community that we didn't think should go to jail, and then we'll be like, oh crap, whose idea was it to have these cameras?
Silence is usable in California in the court things.
Silences?
Yes.
California.
Silence can be used to incriminate you.
The
in
California
California.
Supreme Court passed that. said yes. Yes.
I know,
Yes.
I know.
Really?
I haven't heard that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard that yet either.
Very
But
strange.
So
Glad I don't live in California.
And it's motivating.
Are you?
I know, but it's a creep. It creeps around, right? All this,
Do you get this in the mail?
I was probably up the night, but it's like motivating people.
all this stuff goes around.